Hello everyone, Ariam here, and welcome back to another episode of Not Dinosaur Days, because today we are not talking about a dinosaur. We're talking about a teeny tiny pterosaur. This animal here is Jeholopterus, and depending on what side of the internet you're on, it's pretty split. People either believe this is the cutest thing they've ever seen, or an uncanny, scary little Muppet monster. I personally think that a scary little Muppet monster can be adorable, and I think that's what this animal is. A little unsettling, and I'd still want to pet it. This little guy had a few traits that you don't tend to associate with pterosaurs. When you hear pterosaur, you might think pterodactyl, large beak, huge wings, and that's just not what this little guy was. Jeholopterus actually had a mouth that was wider than it was long, meaning a lot of artists tend to depict it as similar to a frog-mouthed bird. And that bird also has problems with Muppet allegations, so I think there's some sort of pattern here. One of the few Jeholopterus specimens is actually incredibly well preserved, and the specimen actually includes carbonized skin fibers and pycnofibers. Pycnofibers are a lot like protofeathers, small hair-like filaments that would have come across as a type of fuzz, which means that this little tiny pterosaur might have been really fluffy. Now, of course, we can't yet say for sure exactly how extensive this pycnofiber covering was, so it's unlikely that this animal was so fluffy it would be like a flying Pomeranian, but at the very least, it was covered in a silky layer of pycnofibers. The preserved remains of these pycnofibers created a sort of semicircle around the skeleton of this animal, leading people to believe that these pycnofibers extended pretty far off the body, leading to a very fluffy animal. This is possible, and I did, of course, draw a fairly fluffy boy here, but it's also possible that this is because of how this animal fossilized. This particular specimen was crushed between two slabs of really heavy rock, so it's possible that the remains sort of splatted into a semicircle shape that would have resulted in a halo of fuzz left around it. It's a much happier thought to consider that it might have been a really fluffy animal rather than just a really flat, fuzzy pancake. Either way, this guy did have fuzz. To what extent? Unclear, but he was fuzzy. He was fuzzy, he had a goofy Muppet mouth and big eyes, and honestly, not a thought in his head. And that should remind you to smile.